Good morning, Carol Johnson.
Good morning, Bob Ponce. How are you?
Good, good. I'm glad that you can hear me.
Yes.
Yes. So, the big story this week is that we're in the approval process for the Pfizer vaccine for kids 12 to 15. And so I believe what has happened is that the FDA has authorized it for use for that group. And then there's some other panel, the ACIP panel, that's supposed to sign off on it today. I'm not really understanding what the differences between these organizations are, but it seems like everybody is in lockstep, and all the news reports are saying that they'll be able to start giving vaccines as early as tomorrow. So I guess everyone is pretty much expecting the rubber stamp approval from this final group today. Um, so let's see what we know about these things. There's some issues about it that we should talk about. Um, so one is the issue of consent, because consent has to be given by the parents in order to vaccinate, which makes sense. But I read something in MedPage. I want to read this to you here, which is interesting. Though there's an organization called the ASTHO, which stands for Association of State and Territorial Health Officials. And they are mentioning that while states have been planning and preparing for how to vaccinate adolescents, they also need to address parents and guardians, especially with recent research revealing a low percentage of parents would consent to getting their kids getting a COVID-19 vaccine. They broke the groups up into four groups: those that are motivated to get the vaccine, those who would only get it if it was convenient for their children, those that have lots of questions about the vaccine, and those who are definitely not in favor of it. And in all of them, they're grappling with the issues of consent. And they said it's not necessarily just the consent of the parents. ASTHO said vaccine also requires the assent of the child, meaning the child should also agree to get vaccinated. That's an interesting little nuance there.
It is very
Yeah,
interesting.
and they use the word assent instead of consent.
Right.
So I actually looked this up this morning. I sometimes I catch these words and it's like, well, why did they use that particular word? And the difference is consent means that someone has to be of a legal age for consent, and assent means basically the same thing, except that the person who is assenting is not of legal age. So they're actually technically saying that the parents should consent, but the kid is supposed to also assent as well, which I find interesting because I think back to vaccinations when I was a kid, and the issue of assent, like we had a choice in it.
Right.
It's never presented to us. It's just like you're going to the doctor and they're going to stick you with it, and that's what's going on.
Right.
So this assent issue is interesting. This is only talked about on MedPage. I've read a number of different articles on it. No one is actually talking about the kids actually having any say so in this. Um, they all are talking about other issues about it, such as there are big plans in terms of how they're trying to reach out to kids, and they're talking about going to amusement parks and beaches, and they're talking about having a mobile truck like an ice cream truck that will roll around and do vaccines for kids.
Oh boy.
um it's all sounds very I don't know. uh, there's definitely a push to get it through, to work through pediatricians because those are the trusted health providers for kids and for the parents for the kids. And so the New York Times is reporting that President Biden announced plans last week to ship doses of the Pfizer vaccine directly to pediatricians' offices. And they said that about 20,000 pharmacy sites were also ready to administer the vaccine to younger adolescents. Now, as we know about Pfizer, there are always logistical issues because of the issue of having to have the cold storage, and
Right.
so that's one issue that they have. Um, there's another issue that the Times mentioned, which is that there's practical consideration about trying to stagger COVID shots around the routine vaccines required for school in September. And the reason why this complicates it is because, according to the CDC, no vaccines can be given 2 weeks before and after 2 weeks after a COVID vaccine. And so that makes it complicated once it gets toward the summer and kids are getting ready for school, that you know, you can't do that vaccine. That's really literally about a month, you know, a month that you can't have the vaccine before and after. So that makes it interesting.
Yeah, this is getting more and more complicated as the days grow long. But
Hmm.
I was a little fearful when you started that you was going to say kids would make the decision on getting the vaccine, because I'm like,
Well, I mean,
it's
it's
not birth control, where a kid can go in and get birth control without parental consent.
yeah. I mean, and again, I'm just bringing up what was presented in this article. I don't think practically, you know, it's ever going to come up because in the history of kids getting vaccines, I don't think it was ever presented to the kid like they have a choice. And and again, I don't want to say this to say this about the issue of vaccinating versus not vaccinating kids. I think what I want to talk about is making sure that there's a consistent conversation about the risk that kids have versus the risk that adults have, and particularly seniors. In other words, we started this vaccine conversation with seniors because we knew that they were the most at risk, and now we're getting down to kids who we know, based on the numbers, are the least at risk. So if kids are at the least at risk, then you want to actually have regular conversations about you know at what age is this appropriate, because it seems to me that the pharmaceuticals, their objective is always to get every kid vaccinated and
Mm-hmm.
have them on this schedule from birth. And I say this to say, you know this week we're talking about 12 to 15-year-olds, but I'm looking at the Pfizer press release on this, and they're already doing trials on kids from 6 months to 11-year-olds. So that's the next frontier for them is literally from 6 months to 11 to they're testing those. Now, I looked at the data on the the test trial for the 12 to 15-year-olds, and one of the things about it, and I think one of the reasons why they kind of got behind this quickly, is that they actually had 100% efficacy for the kids in this particular trial, which is higher than any of the others they had. But I also want to kind of put this thing in context, which is that they they enrolled 2,260 adults, and they basically split it between the placebo group, which is 1,129. The vaccine group is 1,131. And out of the placebo group, 18 cases of COVID were observed. And out of the vaccinated group, there were none. So that 18 is about 1.5% of that group versus none with the vaccinated group, which is great numbers. But the point is that you're not having a whole lot of people in the placebo group getting COVID. It's 1.5%, and I don't think any of those were situations where it went to any kind of serious complications. So you want to look at these things and assess the risk on an individual basis. If you have a family that has a senior adult in there and you want to have the kids vaccinated so that they can spend time with their grandparents and feel comfortable about it, I think that makes a lot of sense. Does it mean that every 12 to 15-year-old should be vaccinated? I think that parents should have the right to evaluate this thing on their own and figure out what makes sense for them. And we understand that some of those parents are knuckleheads and will just don't want anything to do with it. But the bottom line is that parents have the right to be able to evaluate these things based on their own, their family situations and what they recommend. And then children 6 months to 11-year-olds, I think we need to look at that and understand it before it gets, um, before it becomes a fixture on the vaccine schedule. So,
I think
but
the
these,
main problem across the board from the beginning, the onset of this, there's
mhm.
not enough conversations being had.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know, they're speaking amongst each other, but
hmm
you're trying to get this to a mass population.
hmm
And, you know, it's a lot scarier when you're talking about kids.
yeah,
A
hmm
lot scarier. You
hmm
know, I remember when they first rolled out, it was like everything, you know, seniors, you should shelter in place.
hmm
Seniors, you should do this. People with underlying illnesses, you should do this. And
hmm
then I found it interesting that when the vaccine was rolled out, there was some concern in getting it out to seniors, but I didn't think that it was enough places, number one, that they made it easy, number two, people couldn't navigate the system.
hmm
And so before a large amount of those people were vaccinated, and I thought it was kind of crazy that when you said seniors that you didn't include the people with the underlying illnesses at the same time.
hmm
Thought that was very odd. And then by the time you included the people with the underlying illnesses, then you started opening it up to other people.
hmm
So it's never really a time where you can say, okay, we're going to make sure that this segment is going to be vaccinated in this segment and that segment and that segment.
hmm
Everything they just kept adding on. And so you saw a lot of those people with those underlying illnesses and those seniors having lots of difficulty getting the vaccine. And once it dropped to 30, we knew, you know, it was going to be almost impossible for some people to get it. 30-year-olds can move around the city. You know, they're
hmm
on their bikes. They can go wherever to get this vaccine. That you know, seniors couldn't do that.
hmm
So now you're talking about kids, and there's just not enough conversations about this. You know,
hmm
you keep hearing, the only thing I'm really hearing, every now and then I'll hear a celebrity on TV say, you know, we got to get a shot in the arm. But the people that are in charge, the administration, and I don't mean just President Biden,
hmm
you know, the health professionals need to be out here giving that information out.
Hmm.
Not trying to soup kids up, like they think they're going to get a free ice cream cone, we'll get the vaccine or something
Right.
like that, or beg
Right.
mom to get the vaccine. You know,
Hmm.
there's not enough conversations. We know that that has been just across the board all the way through for the past year.
Hmm.
No matter what we're talking about, it's never coming from the people who's making the decisions.
Hmm. Hmm.
So that's just a little frightening. I mean, I remember even the governor was on like every day. Then now he pops up once, twice a week. But
Hmm.
still, there's not. They need to have commercials. They need to have infomercials, rather, different things like that, where people are seeing this on a regular basis,
Hmm.
as opposed to so many people just walking around trying to figure it out and getting it from, you know, the university in the corner of Lenox Avenue.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, come on now. It's time that they just stop playing this game. And if we're this deep into it and they're still playing these games, I just don't see them stopping.
Hmm. Hmm.
So at least they're not using the word hesitancy anymore. But
Well, the interesting thing, they always that's always a pet peeve because they're always trying to put it on like black people are the most hesitant ones, and we have the most reason to be, but the most hesitant are still white male Republicans. That's what the data showed, and none of the media picked up on that. And there's still, the stories that we saw about them now thinking maybe we're not going to be able to reach herd immunity and it's because they know they have a bunch of folks who don't look at anything, because what we've obviously always tried to do here is look at the science, but understand that the science is sometimes shaped by, you have multi-billion dollar corporations that
yeah,
run the pharmaceuticals, and they have very, very good resources to be able to push the narratives that they have. And so it's very, sometimes very, very difficult to separate the science from the marketing, you know. And that's, and people don't like to talk about that side of it, but it's the truth, and when we talk about vaccines, I want to show you something that so this is the vaccine schedule from birth to 15 months, you know, and you start out with hepatitis B, where they want to give you your first dose, at birth, and then, another dose at 1 month, 2 months, another dose 6 months to 9 months. And then you see the different things, diphtheria, polio, flu, measles, mumps, rubella. So these are things that we know, and certainly most of the stuff on here is stuff that we grown up with, and we know that there are diseases that have been basically conquered versus with vaccines. But when you start out with hepatitis B for a child who's born, a hepatitis B is a disease that's primarily been shared through, passed through people sharing needles. So the risk for a newborn getting hepatitis B is so low. Why do you have a hepatitis B, on the schedule for
right.
kids who are born? And so I think that there's a conversation that still needs to be had about looking at the entire vaccine schedule, because to me it feels like, they're pushing that they want to have, you know, the COVID vaccine on the vaccine schedule. And again, we're not there yet. COVID is, these vaccines have only been approved for emergency use authorization. They have not been approved yet for regular authorization, but because of the nature of this particular crisis, it's under this EUA, as they call it.
Mhm.
And so I just feel like, as we do things, and as we face, um, you know doing everything we can to stem this pandemic, it's also very, very important that we keep the dialogue going about just the overall long term health, because a lot of things were rushed into place based on the nature of this, and that's, of course it's needed. We needed to address it. We had a previous administration that had its head in the sand, and we lost you know we lost a lot of momentum trying to figure this thing out while they were pretending that it didn't exist. So we know this, but going forward, we need to be looking at the long term results. We need to be looking at the data. One of the things to me is very, very encouraging is that we've had millions of people who have been vaccinated, and we have the data on it. So there was a lot of trepidation going in where it was it tested on enough people, but they have rolled these vaccines out, and the numbers seem to indicate that for the most part these vaccines are safe, and in very small percentages there have been situations, but that does not mean that we have yet seen what the long-term effects are. And I just feel like we need to continue to have reasonable dialogue, looking at the science, turning down the noise on either end of it, to just look at what's actually going on, and allow people to make informed health decisions.
Well, these are the conversations that have been had, and for some reason, um, these things continue to not take place.
Hmm.
You know, and so we just gonna have to keep dealing with this problem.
Hmm.
People are scared. They don't know what to do,
Hmm.
and um, and they're not helping it. They're not
Hmm.
helping it at all.
Hmm.
You know, and you can't always depend on looking for people in the community. It's got to come from the people that's actually doing this.
Hmm.
It's almost as if, well, we want to tell you to just go ahead and get it, but we don't feel like we owe you any explanation as to
Hmm.
why, or any concrete evidence on what's happening and what's not happening. We
Hmm.
give information because we dig, but fear is a motivator. And if
Yeah.
you get enough people that are fearful in the street and they're passing that on, it's difficult to unlearn that. Once you
Hmm.
get the wrong facts on things, um, it's difficult to turn people around.
Hmm.
So if they can't achieve what they're looking to achieve, a lot of it has to do with lack of concrete transparency.
Hmm.
It's just that simple. It's
Yeah.
just that simple. Because you could be a medical professional. I could be telling somebody something, but I'm not the one that's giving you the vaccine.
Hmm.
I'm not the one that created it, and I'm not the one that's injecting you with it.
Hmm.
So I don't know why it's so difficult to get through to people that you. The dialogue has got to come from you guys.
Hmm.
It's got to come from you. Got a lot of money. You're spending a lot of money. You need to get some more stuff out there. Put everybody's on some type of social media. Get that stuff on social media, which is what we've been talking about. You know,
Hmm.
those ads that's popping up in your Facebook and feed every time you turn around. Put that stuff out there
Hmm.
so people can see it. You know, get it out there.
Hmm. So I got one more story we want to talk about, and I think we'll wrap up after this. And so it's some interesting work that's being done, that they're trying to come up with nasal vaccines. And so the rationale behind this, which makes a lot of sense, they're saying that the mucosal immune system represents the body's first line of defense. I'm reading this from MedPage. Um, against outside pathogens at surfaces like the nose, lungs, mouth, eyes, and GI tract. And because the nasopharynx is the primary entry point for SARS CoV, meaning the nose and the mouth, targeting the nasal cavity could be one of the best lines of defense for vaccines. And this is according to Michael Russell, who's a professor at the University of Buffalo. So that makes it does make a lot of sense because what we know about the disease is that it comes in through the nose and mouth, but it really starts its trouble when it makes its way down to the lungs. And if you can stop it in the nose and the mouth, you know, you're reducing its you know, ability to do damage and also reducing, transmission. So these are some things that the scientists are working on, and they have a few things in studies, and that might be interesting information. So, like everything else, we keep our eyes on these things as they develop, and we share the information with you guys because somebody's got to do it, right?
Yeah. Well, that's where they went to get the sample for the COVID
Mm-hmm.
in the nasal passages.
Yeah, exactly,
Even
exactly.
though, they were saying early on that you could do saliva testing. I did a saliva test. The endocrinologist,
Mm-hmm.
he says, no, I can do a saliva test on you. So I mean, to me, that just kind of makes some sense.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, definitely makes some sense.
Mm-hmm.
So I just America, just get busy.
Yep.
Just get busy. Get the information out there. I'm not mad at you, but
Mm-hmm.
get the information out there. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I don't even have a conversation with people if they say they don't want to have it. They don't want to get the vaccine. There's no conversation for me to have with them. You know,
Mm-hmm.
because it's just not enough information out there, and there's too much other stuff that is useless
Mm-hmm.
that we're allowing to be all over the airwaves, and in newspaper, all this useless stuff, in the same way that's constantly being printed and showing up in feeds. This information needs to be dealt with the same way.
Yep.
It's really ridiculous because the vaccine has been out now for a couple of months, and there's still so many people that are confused about it.
Mm-hmm.
Really, really, really confused about it, and it's just it's bad. I think the country owes people that much. Don't keep beating up on people and saying, "Well, you got to get it. You didn't get it. Go get it." You know, give them the information.
Right. Yep.
You know, we're always good for, um, attacking people, but we always seem to attack all the wrong things too. America is
Mm-hmm.
known for attacking all the wrong things.
Yeah.
You
Yep.
know,
Mm-hmm.
so if you want people to make informed decisions, you got to
Give
be
them the information.
transparent. I mean, dang, this doesn't even make sense. I'm just so shocked that even going around the neighborhood that I don't see stuff out there. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
looking that I don't see a lot of information out there. So that's this just not gonna work
Mm-hmm.
until they step their game up.
Yep. So that's it for today. We're here every Wednesday morning at 9:30 with the latest on COVID and other related stories, and that's all I got.
Well, as always, stay safe. Remember to wear your mask.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Even after you've been fully vaccinated. For now, Fauci's talking about changing some of the stuff. If you have a vaccinated household meeting with other people that's not vaccinated, you know, but you got to look this stuff up.
Mm-hmm.
And again, there's no solid anything. So you got to make your own conscious decision. But continue to wear the mask, continue to socially distance, and wash those hands.
Yep.
And make sure your kids, in particular, are washing their hands too. You know, kids love to run in the house and go straight to the refrigerator and get icy pop or whatever. Make sure people are washing their hands and wiping off frequently touch surfaces in your home. Those protocols have not changed. COVID is still out there, it is still alive, and it is still well. Even with all the people that's vaccinated, COVID is still out there alive and well, you know. So don't get fooled into just dropping, you know, all of the safety measures, especially now that it's getting warmer. You know, don't be fooled by that.
Yep.
So we want to see you again next week. We
Yep.
just want to see you,
That's right.
you know, whether it's here, there, or wherever. We want to see you. So have a great week and stay safe.